Peter, are you in favour of it?
No, not at all. I think it's barbaric, and I think Lee Anderson's justification, no one's ever committed a crime after being killed by the state, is a really foolish one. I don't think it's a state...
It's true.
I think it's a... Well, lots of things are true, but not necessarily good ideas. I think it's not the state's role to kill people. To me, the primary role of prison is not about punishment. It's about keeping everyone else safe, the law-abiding public. Clearly, it's obviously very difficult to rehabilitate some people, but it would just be going back 50 or 100 years in time. I know very few people that are proposing it. And the other point that Lee Anderson hasn't really addressed is that there are miscarriages of justice. So can he give a 100% guarantee that juries will reach the correct verdicts in all future murder cases? Of course he can't.
Yeah, that's very nice. I don't agree with you, by the way, saying that the primary purpose of prison should be rehabilitation. Primary purpose... I thought that's what you said.
The primary should be keep other people safe.
Right. Don't you think the primary purpose of a prison should be to punish the person? And we talk about rehabilitation. Do you accept that some people are just out-and-out wrong-uns? They are beyond rehabilitation?
Yeah, some people are beyond rehabilitation at the more serious end of the offending spectrum, absolutely.
What's the point in keeping them in prison, then?
Because the alternative is killing them, and I think that's completely barbaric. And it is, to me, the primary purpose is to keep the 60-odd or more million people who are law-abiding, like all of us, safe. That should be the main motivation of prison.
Martin Daubney, please tell me you're going to speak sense and say, yes, let's get the death penalty back.
Well, Lee Anderson, the Ashfield Anvil, the Red Wall Rottweiler, is a pal of mine, actually. I stood against him in Ashfield in the election in 2019. I wanted to beat him, but I was the first to shake his hand when he thrashed me. Now he's the deputy chair. He's certainly ruffling a lot of feathers. And what he does, he kind of puts the Weatherspoons into Westminster. This is the conversation that happens all over working-class Britain, and there's very much a feeling of who does society support, the victim or the perpetrator of a crime. Now, Lee was careful with his words, or that's been lost, the nuance has been lost in the media reporting, of course. Now, he was saying in irrefutable cases, such as the murder of Lee Rigby, where there's video evidence, he would support a return. And actually, that is not a minority position. The latest figures we have on this are from YouGov in March of last year, and 58% of people support multiple murderers being executed, 54% terrorists, and 52% support child murderers being executed. So this is not an extreme minority position.
But do you agree with
actually, Brits do. I personally don't agree with the death penalty. I have a sister who lives in Texas. I spent a lot of time in America. I've been in America where people have been executed. I don't think it's the way we should be going. But I do think we should be allowed a debate about this, because we're not allowed a debate about anything at the moment. Net zero, trans issues, immigration.
You are on GBNews. That's exactly what we're debating.
That's why it's the fastest growing TV channel. But the fact of the matter is, Lee is a wrecking ball. And I think we should be having these conversations. Will we get a referendum? No chance. The last time they gave us one, they didn't get the result they wanted. They'll never let us have a referendum on this. I don't think we'll ever see it. And it won't be Tory party policy. Rishi Sunak has already today come out and said, no way, I don't agree with Lee. But Lee is having those conversations. He's pushing the envelope, and he's making the Tory feel like a landing place for people who are, as you would call it, old-fashioned right-wing.
I think when you've got a situation where somebody is beyond all doubt, you can see that they've done this hideous crime, you've got the DNA evidence, you've probably got video evidence, there is no conceivable way that this person is not guilty. And you've got this whole life tariff now, this whole life term, so you're going to be in prison for the rest of your days. I think there's about 70-odd people in this country that fit into that bracket. They are people like Wayne Couzens, people like Michael... how do I pronounce it? Adebolaji, the guy that killed Lee Rigby, the person that killed Joe Cox. These kind of people, they're never coming out. So what is the point? And this is, to me, I perhaps would certainly be in favour of a referendum on this issue, and then I would respect the result. I just cannot get my head around about £48,000 per annum. On average, it costs to keep someone incarcerated, probably more when you get to the higher security end of prisons. What is the point in spending that money? It's a waste, isn't it?
Well, the cases you highlighted are horrendous, and I think we've always got to be conscious that the pain for bereaved families goes on every day. They face their own life sentence if they've lost someone, even perhaps after the newspaper coverage has been dialed down. But I'm not God, and the state is not God, and it's not the state's role to play God. And I don't believe, even if there's 100% certainty about a verdict, that it's the state's role to kill people.
The interesting thing about the cost of it, because Lee talks about the cost of keeping these people in prison, the cost to keep Lee Rigby's killers, a 45-year term and an entire life term, is about £6 million for their 2 lives, just to keep them in jail, £6 million. I think people have a right to say, or to ask the question, is that really how we should be spending our money? The problem, of course, is when you look to America, is it actually a deterrent? Well, there are many, many people on death row who are evidence of the fact it doesn't deter. In the UK, I've spent time in Category A jails. I go in and give seminars on men's issues, and I've met killers, I've met serial killers, and I've asked them, would a death penalty put you off? And they say no. Because a lot of the guys who did premeditated murder, they said, I would do it again. A lot of them don't regret doing it because they were crimes of passion, they were crimes of revenge. It's very, very complex and it's very, very nuanced. And while I think the feeling of immediate justice is tempting, isn't it better to let these 2 extremists rot in jail forever than have their martyrdom?
No, I would say, because probably all the time that they're in prison, I wouldn't put it past them to be able in some way to be able to influence up-and-coming, aspiring terrorists.
It's a fair point.
I don't believe that you can literally lock these people in a box, never let them communicate ever again with anyone. I'm sure that they are able to communicate. So for me personally, no, actually, I don't think it's better to just leave them languishing. I would say you clearly don't respect human rights. You know, if you're going to do what you did, I don't need to go over it. It's tea time. I think you'll all remember that awful situation of Lee Rigby. If you want to do that, you clearly don't respect human rights. So off you go. The flaw in the plan with some of these people, though, is they will probably think they're going to some paradise that's littered with virgins or whatever it is there, so they probably would quite like that. So that would be a bit of a flaw in my plan. Anyway, the European Convention of Human Rights, when we're a member of that, which we currently are, you're not allowed to be able to bring back the death penalty anyway. So isn't that, if someone is in favour of this, isn't that an argument, another argument, for leaving the Convention for Human Rights?
To me, this issue is about justice and it transcends the EU and the debate around that, and it even transcends money. And I'm sorry if I'm a broken record, it's not the state's role to kill people.
Well, I would say, really. Let me ask you guys at home, is there any more sense lurking among the viewers? Because I think it's quite a good idea to have a referendum, but I am making it clear the European Convention of Human Rights would mean that we're not able to bring it back at all, currently, as things stand. Pete says, well done again, Lee Anderson. You would go a bit further, Pete, so I might leave it there, but I get your gist. Oliver says the death penalty should be reintroduced for murderers and rapists. I like this next bit, actually, Oliver, and I agree with you, you're a sensible person. The victim's next of kin should be given the option to decide whether the guilty or not should face execution. I think that's very fair. Martin says, absolutely not. You cannot trust the police in any way, so they could fit up the wrong person. Susan says yes, yes, and once again, yes. Peter said, I would definitely like the death penalty to be reinstated. For what crimes, though? Tell me. And Mary says, absolutely, definitely. This country is way too lenient and soft. Very briefly, by the way, do you think Lee Anderson is the right person for this role? Yes,
I think it's an excellent choice. He balances off the other appointment of Mr Hands, who's a Remainer, a very shire Tory. He's a Red Wall. Lee is a Red Wall Rottweiler, as I said. He's making people from working-class environments feel welcome in the party. And he's also neutralising, I think, the threats of other smaller parties. I think it's an excellent appointment.
Do you agree?
Not particularly. I think some of these views we've been talking about tonight from Lee Anderson are a bit foolish, but I also think in time he may become a bit of a liability for Rishi Sunak, whose style of communicating is a world away from that of Lee Anderson.
But don't you need to be able to reach a cross kind of breadth of person, and therefore some styles of communication might reach that bunch of people, and then actually Lee Anderson's style of communication might actually engage a different group of people that perhaps not massively engaged with politics in the first place?
Totally.
Yeah, but I think we've got to be clear about what we mean. Is it about class? For example, Tony Blair from quite a comfortable background, governed alongside John Prescott, was from a very poor background. Is it about geography and the Red Wall? Is it about the job you've done before entering Parliament? It's good to have a range, and Lee Anderson's entitled to his views, as daft as I think they are, but, there's nothing that he said so far that impresses me, and I doubt there will be.
Surely it's about diversity of opinion. We talk about diversity all the time, yet there's a monoculture of how we're allowed to think about things like net zero, transgender, immigration. Lee is setting out his stall. Rishi Sunak's already disagreed. Isn't it healthy to have a broad church of opinion within one party rather than you must toe the party line? That's what I would say.